Welcome to A Slice of Home. I'm Jenn Shields.
And I'm Ryan Shields.
And we're the Shields Group with Royal LePage Martin Liberty Realty. Today we're going to get a closer look at the bones of a house. We're outside a home here that's right in the middle of a renovation. Get a nice close look.
So let's go inside, let's take a peek.
There's some workers inside, so got to be safe. Get our masks on before we head in.
Come on inside, let's join us.
So we are going to get a nice up-close look at the bones of a house today.
Yes, we are joined by Brian Dornn of Dornn Construction to help us talk through probably one of the most intimidating pieces for a homeowner is really understanding what the bones of the house are, and if you are considering doing renovations, what you can do by yourself and when you should start to ask for help from the professionals, because let me tell you, a lot of people try to help themselves when they should be asking for help. It can be pretty dangerous. So first off, thanks for joining us today, Brian.
No problem.
So I'll just get right into it. We are right in the middle of a renovation right now, and just tell us a little bit about what you're looking for. When you first, how did you come to pulling down the drywall here, and what are you looking for, especially with the drywall? Because we were talking about that a little bit before, and there's certain things you were looking for in pulling it down.
And I think also I was going to add one thing that's unique about this home. It was built in the 50s, and there are certain substances and materials that were used in the homes in the 50s, 60s, 70s that maybe really aren't that safe nowadays. One of them maybe specifically being asbestos. So maybe just speaking a little bit to the process of looking at a reno in this era of home and what maybe special implications need to be considered.
No, absolutely. Before we started, we needed to see what was inside this wall. We knew this was a load-bearing wall. We knew it transferred right through the roof because we just kind of poking around and seeing what we needed. We needed to take the drywall off to see what was behind this wall and see what was going on. One of the things to think about when you're taking drywall off is that they use asbestos in the drywall compound of these in a lot of these homes. I had a feeling it wasn't because there was you can't really see it here from the camera, but there was horsehair in some of the compounds here, which kind of gives me a feeling that it probably wasn't asbestos, but there's no way to really know unless you get it tested. So we did. We took a piece of this and we sent it off to get tested, and it came back not having drywall in it. So we felt safe to take off the drywall and expose to see what's behind here. Another thing that we're looking to suspect is what's on these ducts. These ducts are wrapped. We need to look at that. We need to that possibly could have asbestos containing. Right now, it's safe because it's contained. We're not disturbing it. It's wrapped and it's safe the way it is. But if we were to knock this off or scrape it off, we could be disturbing pieces of asbestos that could fly in the air and stuff like that. So it's something we probably want to look at getting tested before we move along and start taking out this wall, because what we really want to do is we want to open this whole area wide open. So we want to take this whole wall out of here, including this ductwork, and reroute the ductwork. So that would be our next step.
So can you talk a little bit about the process? Well, when you sent the drywall samples off, where did you send it to? How long does that take? Who has a look at it? Do you want to just speak to that a little bit?
We sent it to Pinchin. That's where I sent it to.
Yep.
And then they sent it to their lab, I believe in Winnipeg. He sent it to. and then you pay a fee. You can get it tested on a fast test. I think it was like a 2-day turnaround or a week turnaround. It's a little bit cheaper, but we chose the fast test because we wanted to kind of keep things moving. And so then they send you a report, and in that report it tells you what it is, if it's safe or not safe. But I mean, even still, I mean, the guys are taking down this wall. We're still using respirators and stuff like that because there is, it's dusty. It's tough.
Yeah.
You're dealing with old materials, and this house, we happen to have the plans for this house, and this house was built in the 50s, 1955. That's right around the area that we're looking at. That's when they use asbestos in houses. So it's just, you kind of have to really think about it as you're doing it, because what you kind of have a goal in mind. You want to knock this wall out and get this opened up as fast as possible, but you really have to think about safety before you start doing that, not only for yourself, but as all the people coming in and out of it, and homeowners and stuff like that.
So when this, let's say it was asbestos containing, or let's say the wrap on the ductwork is, and you're going to have to remove it to obviously get this wall out, what's the process there? So
we would actually, because we're not certified we're not certified in removing asbestos.
Yep.
We would have to actually retain the service of somebody who was, and they'd mask off this whole area, and they would have to treat it in a certain way.
Yeah. So the drywall is interesting. I never have thought of drywall to have asbestos in it, but what all are you looking for? Like what elements of the structure may contain asbestos? Like I know the wrap on this, or I know some of the ceiling tiles would have, or some of the floor tiles.
Yeah.
I've never really thought of drywall particles and compounds having asbestos. So is there anything else that you're looking for when you're coming in to determine asbestos in that?
Well, really, you're looking at the like a lot of times you're looking at the age of the house. You're looking at like you don't know. Like you really you can look at it and this could this may contain asbestos, may not. Like you need to get it tested.
Yeah.
That's really the only way you'll know. I mean, if it's new drywall, that you bought off of just from your local lumber store in the last couple of years, we're not really worried about that.
Right.
But this is definitely we have 2 layers of drywall here. We have but you can see, and it's not something you're buying from your local lumber store. See, it's the white layer on here that we'd be worried about. I was concerned about here.
Oh, okay.
This white layer, because that's the mud on here. That's the plaster. That's the stuff I was concerned about. And also the joint compounds. They had asbestos in the joint compounds. So we tested a few samples and looked for it, and fortunately did not have any in here.
Yeah, no, that's good.
And then maybe tell us a little bit more about, like we said, this wall's coming right out. And we'll often have clients that look at a space and they're like, I love this, but older homes often are more closed off, separate rooms, and nowadays the style is more really open concept. And we'll have clients that'll say, we'll just blow this wall out, and we try to reiterate that it's not that simple. Do you want to tell us a little bit about what you need to look for structure-wise, load-bearing-wise, and what that all entails to actually get a wall out?
Yeah, so this wall actually is what we can see from this is a 2-story house, and we can see from below that there's a beam with teleposts holding directly under this wall, and this wall transfers directly up to a wall on top, and then goes actually into the attic. So this wall is definitely a load-bearing wall. So if we knock this wall out, we would, without any supports, we would, you'd compromise the structure of the building. So what we want to do once we need to build a wall on this side, because the floor joists for the second level overlap on this wall, and so we need to build a wall on this side and build a wall on that side, then support it, and then take out the wall, and then get beams put in that would support that. Now, what we did is we retained the services of an engineer, and they came in and measured off the size, the spans, and we took pictures of everything underneath, and they came and measured it all. And they're going to get back to me this week sometime with what what their calculations were on where we need to support from underneath, like in the basement, going up, because all these loads transfer down onto a beam and then down onto telepost pads underneath. So sometimes we actually need to cut a support pad in the concrete with a pad with a support beam going up onto the beam and then transfer that load all the way up. And so definitely want to.
So it's not as easy as just take out a wall, run a beam across, and be like, hey, we're done, see you later. Like, there's a lot more to think about in the grand scheme of things, as opposed to making one cut, run a steel beam or a wood beam.
Nothing more, like not just a sledgehammer. And I love the point where you brought up, like, get an engineer in. When you're dealing with structure, you do not want to mess around. Like, you could literally destroy the whole home or leave it vulnerable if you don't know what you're doing. So, like, get an engineer in. We know there's a cost to it, but it's always worth it, right, to make sure that the structure is going to be supported.
Oh, absolutely. Like, you can put lipstick on anything, but when you're dealing with if you're dealing with the structure of the building, you don't want to mess around. You want to know that you're supported, and you need a qualified individual to do that, to help you with that.
Now, just shift gears just a little bit, but now that the wall is opened up, you can see everything that's in it. And in this wall particularly, we can see some of the electrical. If you're to start pulling out cabinets and that, you're going to get to the plumbing. So is this the time that you would highly recommend updating all the plumbing and all of the electrical if it's not to current codes or if it's not new wiring? Is that something you would say is a good investment today once the walls are opened up the way they are?
Well, I think, like, I mean, the other thing we did too is when I brought my electrician and a plumber that I work with on a regular basis, we brought them through here. We talked about, before we started building, we talked about if we remove a chase, because you can see where the chases were coming up from the basement. If we remove a chase, where would we put that if we remove this wall? Because we need a place for, we have to, this is either a vent or heat into this room and this room, and the same thing with that room, because we need return air as well as it has to be balanced. So we talked about where we would do that, and we talked about building bulkheads beside the beam inside the house. We had the electrician come up. We're looking for aluminum wiring.
Yep.
We're looking for knob and tube wiring. We're looking for any of that kind of stuff. We don't want that in the house. The wiring looks pretty good. From what I'm seeing, a lot of updates have been done. So yeah, like, we want qualified individuals to, we need their help.
Yeah. Okay, so now if you did take this wall out and we found knob and tube, or we found aluminum wiring, something that wasn't acceptable anymore, how hard is it to switch it out throughout the whole house? Like, I mean, you don't have to, or do you have to take all the walls out to be able to access that electrical, or is there ways of going about fixing the bones without completely tearing the house apart?
No, absolutely. Like, if you find, like, knob and tube wiring, for instance, you could, especially while you're renovating and you're patching and doing stuff like that, they don't have to rip down walls to do that. You can definitely, like, maybe put a hole in a wall here, and then they have to chase a wire over here or chase a wire over there, and they definitely don't have to demolish the house to do it. But it's something you definitely, if you see it now, you best off address it now,
right?
Then just leave something like that in, because eventually it becomes a fire hazard, and you don't want that for yourself or the next homeowners, or anybody who owns that.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good point too. And one of the things we see with some of our buyers coming in, they ask us, like, how important is this stuff? Is it just mean that I can't get insurance because there's aluminum or wiring or a knob and tube or asbestos? But I think the important piece is you can't get insurance maybe for that because it is actually dangerous. So it's not just, we get clients caught up in the lipstick, like you said, and the nice and shiny, but ultimately you need the home to be safe. So there's a reason that those materials aren't used anymore, and that it's difficult to get insurance on them because they aren't safe, right?
Well, and one thing we get all the time is, what's my return going to be? How much do I get back if I update the electrical or update the plumbing? And I hate to say that there's not a huge return on that, as much as that's just maintenance and upkeep of a house.
Yep.
Like we talked about, you have to invest in the house, you have to invest in yourself for that property to gain equity in that. And that's one of those things. When you open up a wall and you see potentially there's some wiring that needs updating, or there's the plumbing issues, that becomes an issue where we just need to do it. It's just proper maintenance of the house.
And I think back to the scalability of a home
Yep.
too. So we might not say if you put $5,000 into the electrical, you're going to see that back if you sell it next year. But you might not be able to even sell the home in 5 years if you don't put that in. So that's something to consider as well.
Well, that would have been 2 years ago,
Yep.
when people were putting it in and they didn't ever think of, oh, I can't sell it 10, 15 years from now.
Totally.
It's just one of those maintenance things that we got to look at.
Or get insurance,
Yeah, that's exactly. The
Exactly.
insurance is a big issue.
things like that. I
Yep.
mean, even another thing you're looking for is like cast iron pipes. If you open up a wall, you see cast iron pipes, you may want to explore that. Just take that cast iron all the way out down through the stack and just get it out of there, because it just plugs up, and it's not that hard to do while you're here.
Yeah.
It's just that it costs a little bit then, but that update is worth it in the end by
Yeah.
far.
It'll
Yeah.
probably save you money from having to get plumbers in to unplug your
Or
plumbing
even
all the
stress.
time.
Or the stress, or have to go through the reno again to get that pipe out
Yep.
when
Yeah.
it's opened up already. Now, earlier we were talking about asbestos, and I just want to go back to that really quick. What era of homes are you most concerned of when you're looking for asbestos? Like, where am I going into a house thinking I have to have my head on looking for asbestos, and when am I not worried about it at all?
You always want to be looking for it. I mean, you want to be looking for it, like, somebody, like if you, 1950s. That's
Okay.
that's when it really came through. Like if you're talking about a 1950s house and till the 60s or 70s, I believe that's when
Most
they
prominent.
don't quote me on those dates.
Yeah.
But I mean,
Yeah.
you're always cautious, because you want to do the work, but at the same sense, you want to be safe. You want
Yeah.
yourself and your workers and everybody around you to be safe, and that's what it boils down to.
Which is important to know. And so that's like new homes that were built 50s, 60s, 70s. But I think also important to remember that maybe homes that are older than that could have potentially had updating or renovations,
Absolutely.
50s, 60s, 70s, are probably also containing materials with asbestos.
Yeah.
Because you never know. Like you could see drywall on a wall, and it could have been buried. Like you could have drywall not containing asbestos that's burying plaster and asbestos containing materials. So it's best off to just do a quick test before you move on to every next stage, because you can't as you get into it, you uncover more. Is it there? Is it not there? We have to watch for it.
So this is a wood beam.
Mm-hmm.
Are you looking to replace it with a steel beam, or would you be putting another wood beam right back into it?
That's a good question. Like, so this is a 2x4. This is a 2x4 wall. We could we're gonna put a wall, a bearing point right here is what we plan on doing.
Yeah.
So we could make this beam a steel beam. Now the advantage of a steel beam is that it's not as deep.
Okay.
So a wood beam would be deeper. It wouldn't be quite as strong, and we'd probably use an LVL, which is like it's kind of like a big, it's kind of like plywood.
Yeah.
What an LVL is, just for strength, and it's whatever the engineer calls for. But we can ask for certain depths from the engineer. If we say we want a steel beam, we have about 7 inches to play with. They may spec in a steel beam that's rated for that. Whereas if we have 12 inches, the engineer will say, okay, we've got 12 inches, so an LVL will work. And it's cheaper,
Yeah.
it's a little bit easier to work with. But overall, you have some play. We don't have a problem with, because we want to run our ducts beside the beam here. We don't have a problem going down 12 inches because after talking to my plumber, he needs about that much space to put his ductwork in.
Yeah.
Because we have to do whatever this is doing, we have to do it beside the beam. That's what we're running it, and then we'll just run the drywall as a bulkhead up there.
Oh, okay.
That's what we'll do. So that's how we're gonna hide all the ductwork, because we still have to feed the ductwork to the upstairs and this floor.
Yeah.
Of course.
So you just mentioned you're going to have a wall,
Mhm.
so you'll have kind of the load bearing point there. would it be possible to run completely span it with a steel beam or another wood beam this distance?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's it's what you're looking for. Something you got to think about is then if we want to span that distance with a steel beam, how are we going to get the beam in here?
Yeah.
Oh,
So
yeah.
There's
are
other
we going to have
things.
to take out that window and then walk it through and then get it up? And then also the logistics of carrying a beam that heavy.
Yeah.
It is heavy. Like if it's a steel beam, and because that's what it would be if it was spanning that far.
Yeah.
It'd be very heavy. So you got to think about that kind of stuff too.
Yeah. So it's not
So
just as
like a
easy.
10-foot, if you want to span 10 feet, it's easier to do than spanning 22 feet, which you can. We can ask the engineer to span 22 feet, and they'll spec a beam that's a very, very heavy beam that would span that. But then we would also span. We were talking about the point loads down low.
Yep.
We probably have to cut a hole in the concrete and get a big pad down there that would handle that. That they would spec in as well.
So I think that's like also we see clients a lot that want to pull walls out, and we try to explain the process a little bit. Either you need to leave the structure in that is at least part of the wall where the load bearing is, right? Or there is going to be a big beam added, because a lot of times the ceiling will just be flush. So yeah, you're either leaving part of the wall in, or you're going to have a beam that's going to decrease your ceiling height overhead is essentially the only way to really pull
Right.
that out, right?
So what we plan on doing on this house is because there is going to be a beam in here, and there's going to be a bulkhead in here to run our ductwork. To match that in, we were talking to the homeowner about actually building bulkheads around the outside to match
Oh,
what it looks
okay.
like, and then we can put some lights in there.
Oh, yeah.
And then that would be like accent lighting.
Yep.
And it would kind of match the look of the house, because we require this for structural and for ductwork, but really we'll do that just for lipstick over there.
Yeah.
And we'll put some lighting in there. It'll look really nice. We've got like a coffered ceiling in here.
So it's kind of like the old saying, anything's possible. It just depends how much money you want to spend on something.
Yes, yeah.
That's what I always keep saying. People ask, can we do it? And I always say, well, yeah, absolutely.
You
Just how
probably
much
can.
do you want to spend on
Yeah.
it?
But really the bulkhead ceilings are not really that expensive, but it's just a way to kind of
Tie it
blend
in.
in everything that we need here to do this, because we need a certain amount of headspace in here to do all this stuff like that, and it would kind of look odd to have just one big bulkhead in the middle and then have all the ceiling flat everywhere else. Whereas if we matched it with bulkheads, it would look like a coffered ceiling, and we could put some accent lighting, and we'd get that effect.
That kind
you
of
know?
aesthetic. And
Yeah.
again, back to like using a contractor who's going to be thinking about things like this, that as just a homeowner without construction experience, maybe you don't even think about it. And it's pretty easy to walk into a home and tell when it's been a do-it-yourself job versus when there's been a professional in. And as in terms of resale, that definitely can impact value when you can tell that there's quality work that's been put in and things have been thought about versus somebody just trying to do it themselves and kind of missing some of those steps.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. So I just want to take a quick second and say thanks, Brian, for coming and joining us today. The knowledge that you've shared is great. I mean, we can sell houses, but we're not professionals in building them. So it's great to have somebody that knows what they're talking about and really knows what to tell the viewers to be aware of. So thanks again, Brian, for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Well, thanks again for tuning in, guys. And we look forward to joining you again on the next episode of A Slice of Home.